Hi, I'm Cheryl Sharp, the Deputy Executive Director of the State of Connecticut Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities.
I'm Kim Jacobson, one of the legal directors at the CHRO.
The Commission is proud to have partnered with Voices of Hope to complete this education project, and we are immensely grateful to Ruth Weiner for sharing her story with us.
The Holocaust was one of many genocides that have occurred throughout distant and recent history, several taking place within the last decade. 6 million Jews were murdered during the Holocaust through systematic state sponsored killings. Thousands from historically marginalized groups, such as gay and disabled people, were also targets of this violence. It is crucial that we continue to talk about the Holocaust and its tragedy so that we never forget what happened and we can stand up to hatred.
The mission of the Connecticut Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities is to eliminate discrimination through enforcement, advocacy, and educational projects such as this one. When we learn from the firsthand experience of others, we gain a greater, more connected understanding of our world and of our communities. So, without further ado, here's one of millions.
I was born in Vienna in 1931, which in the history of Austria was the beginning of the start of a stable period. If you learned anything about Austria in your modern history, you probably know that Vienna was the heart of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which was the dominant entity over Europe. And it wouldn't be hard to imagine what a city was like with an emperor and palaces and a court. We were a little bit part of that. My mother's father had a small shoe factory, and what they manufactured was beautiful dress shoes for ladies who attended balls. And I was very happy about that. Why? I got the scraps, I got the leftovers to make clothing for my dolls. And I truly led a very lovely life. I was taught piano by my aunt. I went to figure skating lessons. I went to dance lessons. And I wound up going to the same elementary school that my mother did. It was a rooted, beautiful time to be a little girl in Vienna. As much as I enjoy telling you the happy parts of my life, I have no problem telling you the other parts. I'm somebody who believes that the only thing worse than talking about bad things is not talking about bad things. At 91, I am among the very youngest of the remaining Holocaust survivors. There are people alive today who are saying, this is something that never happened. I'm here to tell you it certainly did happen. And I'm here to tell you a little bit about how it happened to just one family of millions. Historically, there are moments where everything changes. For America, 9/11 was a moment like that. December 7th, 1941 was a moment like that. And the time of it was called the Anschluss, was absolutely a moment like that, certainly for me and for my family. But this was probably the softest invasion in history, or maybe one of the, because it clearly had been planned for a long time. And one day, you just suddenly had red bunting with swastikas on all of the public buildings, and beautiful avenues had flags running down either side of them. So dramatic. Even as a young child, I noticed what was going on in terms of this almost brainwashing. One of the things that I remember vividly is I could see from my room a huge billboard that had been erected, and it just said Wähle Ja, which is vote yes, choose yes. It didn't say who or what or anything. It was just you get that in your head that when you go to vote, you vote yes. And if you knew what was good for you, that was what you did. You voted yes. And what were you voting yes for? You were voting yes for this Anschluss. And they had what we would call a fake election. Because Germany was so progressive and so cultured, and I might add, pretty much one of the last places that anybody would have expected this from, they were able to succeed phenomenally. He was able to develop an immense following of people who bought into the anti-Semitism that he developed into a system. But nobody cared, nobody did anything about it. The signs were very apparent immediately. If you were Jewish, you suddenly found yourself in a very difficult situation. Jewish stores began to be looted, vandalized, damaged. There were, of course, huge signs on the Jewish stores, "Don't buy from Jews." And there were huge signs on all of the parks, a lot of public gardens, rows of benches on public avenues. And they all had signs: no Jews allowed, no dogs allowed, no spitting allowed. All the awful things that were happening to Jews began to multiply, and they began to hit our family. My father, who had been politically active, he was arrested because he had been active with a socialist organization. And that was, believe it or not, one of the best things that could have happened to him. A non-Jewish lawyer who had also been active with him, but who had been able to join the Nazi Party very early on, showed up at the jail, and he banged on the table of the chief of police and he said, "I am a lawyer for the Nazi Party. This man is my star witness for a case that I'm going to bring. And whatever you do, do not send him off to a concentration camp." Now, at that time, there were not yet death camps as such. Going to a concentration camp was almost as effective because you worked as long as you were physically able. You were not fed enough, people became ill. As soon as they were no longer able to work, well, that was it. And what they would then do is send you home to die. So the fact that he had this lawyer coming to his rescue every couple of weeks kept him from being sent to a concentration camp, and we were very grateful. Very shortly after that, we were forbidden to attend school. And the only other option was the Jewish school. It was a Jewish day school, but it was as far as you could go on the opposite end of Vienna, which was not a safe place to be at all. The Hitler Youth tried to do everything that they possibly could to harass and to torture Jews that they met in the street. That was kind of the favorite harassment, was the scrubbing of the sidewalks. They would just grab whoever they could grab, old people, women with babies, and kids, and that's why we were very frightened of that. Placed posters onto the sidewalk And then they would tell you to scrape them off with your fingernails. And the tips of your fingers very quickly would become red with blood. And that was called Jewish nail polish. We went to this Jewish school on the 10th of November, which was not Kristallnacht, but the day after, which is when it occurred in Austria. My mother had a sense that there was something wrong. She did something that normally never happened. We recited a quick prayer together before we got on the trolley. And by the time we got to the Jewish section, we saw something which, again, it kind of makes me shake to this day. They had pulled all the books out of the bookstores and were burning them in huge pyres on street corners. And that to me was just so reprehensible because I loved books. It became very personal. Well, on that particular day, there was not just the usual group, there was a huge mob shouting all kinds of things at the kids in the school. It was just too dangerous. And the teachers dismissed us very quickly out a side entrance, and we made our way back to the streetcar and home. And by then, much of the city was burning, and we knew that something very serious was going on. We had just made it into our apartment when we heard this unbelievable pounding at the door. Geheimstaatspolizei, secret state police. We know that you're in there. Open this door immediately or you're going to be sorry. Pounding went on for about 7 hours. And my mother and I sat in what was our living room. And we couldn't talk to each other. Couldn't get anything to eat or drink. We couldn't use the bathroom. But the worst of all was that the telephone kept ringing and ringing and ringing. Was there a problem at my grandparents' house? Maybe my father somehow in prison needing help, or somebody else in the family needing help. At one point, it sounded as though they were walking away. And the phone rang again. She chose to answer it. And she heard a voice on the other end of the phone that said, "Don't say a word." And it was the lawyer who was my father's friend. And he said, "I know that you have the Gestapo outside your door, and I know that you're in danger. And here's what you're going to do. Put on your coat and hat, put on the child's coat and hat. I am going to come for you, but I think it's safe. I'm going to give you my wife's swastika, and I'm going to give her my daughter's swastika." And then there was a prearranged knock, and it was him, and we were ready to go. We were ready to just squeeze out that door. And we put on these swastikas, and then this is one of the bizarrest episodes of my life, really. We walked out of the building, and went walking. He held my hand so that I would not have to give a Heil Hitler salute. We managed it without any problems, and made our way to his house. And I finished the night in bed with his little daughter. And clearly they were risking their lives to do that. I want to make it very clear that there's nothing special about my story. There really isn't. There are as many stories as there were people involved here, and it's quite safe to make the assumption that the things that happened to me happened to other people. You've probably heard the name Elie Wiesel. I heard him say something which I've never forgotten, and it was that once you've heard the story of the Holocaust from somebody for whom it was a personal experience, you yourself become a witness. The Holocaust was pure hatred in a form previously unimaginable. It was the kind of event that once it happened to you, that defined your life. I'm telling you my story, so that information does not dissipate, it does not disappear, it does not go away.
Ruth Weiner continues to teach about the Holocaust with Voices of Hope and has made it her mission to educate students of all ages about the lessons of the Holocaust.
From hearing Ruth's story, we hope you've learned more about the Holocaust, the magnitude of the tragedy, and we hope you too are inspired to stand up with courage in the face of hate.
The state of Connecticut would again like to thank Voices of Hope and Ruth Weiner.